Welcome to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. In this segment, James and I discuss the infamous grant experiment. I reveal what's happened lately and why it feels so good, and James talks a little bit about his epiphanies. Hope you enjoy. Hey, James.
Yo, what's going on? Hey.
I'm excited because guess what? I got my mojo back on the grants experiment.
Thank God.
Right? I
Thank
thought I felt like such a failure, and then a whole bunch of things happened, and I realized that in fact this is a long game. This is a one-year experiment for a reason, and everything I do is another not a nail in the coffin. No, that's not what I mean.
Nope.
Another quiver in my bow.
Well, the quiver would be the container of arrows. So another arrow
Yes,
for your
another
quiver.
arrow in my quiver. Maybe that's why I'm not getting any grants. I've got quivers in my bow and they're not going anywhere.
And I think your quiver's upside down to start.
That word is so close to another word, I won't even say it. Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know what happened.
Okay.
2nd of February. When was that? I know what happened. I got on that was Monday, and I got onto my 7 a.m. writing group meeting and said, I've been spending hours and hours at the hospital, and so I'm just showing up because I don't have to be at the hospital right now, and I feel like something might happen if I show up because I was just exhausted, and then I had this aha moment as I was looking at the things that I could do to work on my novel. My aha moment was, aha, I'm going to read this.
So it wasn't a aha moment. It was more of a aha.
I have this page open on my computer to this organization called Access Copyright, and they have a research grant that makes me wonder if I can apply for it using the novel that I have sort of, how do you hang a picture? You half-ass it. I have half-ass started this novel. So I started reading the application, and I started making notes, and I have my special dedicated grant notebook. And what I realized was that this is so helpful for letting me understand how my novel connects with the Frankenstein story, because I kind of go back and forth. So it's a Frankenstein novel, sort of. There's a reinvention, it's recreation, but it's also set in current day, and I want it to have a gothic vibe, but I don't know exactly. It's too early for me to make I have to feel my way into it for quite a bit longer. And so I was thinking, is there research I can do that would allow me to get this research grant? And then I thought, I've written historical fiction before, and I spent 2 years on research for one novel. But this one, I'm thinking all of the noodling that I do before I start writing a novel, it's quite a bit of noodling. And it's not that I'm not trying to figure out the plot. I'm not even trying to figure out the characters of the story. I'm trying to figure out something else.
Texture.
Maybe texture. Maybe meaning.
Meaning?
Meaning, maybe the question. I'm
Yeah.
actually trying to figure out the question.
Yeah, what is the big thematic question that
Yeah, and I kind of hate the word theme as applied to something before that something exists, like a novel, because to me the themes are revealed in the writing. So the question is not even thematic. It's more like, it's hard to explain. I can't even explain what the question is. So then I thought, can I describe what I'm trying to discover in this research grant in such a way that they might send me money? But more importantly, in that I can know to me why it's important that there's a Frankenstein element, and why it's important that there's reinvention, and why it's really important to me that the city is a character
Mhm.
in the novel,
Mhm.
if you will, you know. Why does that all matter? And why is unfolding important? That essay I'm obsessed with. And why also is I've been doing some research on the neuroscience of decision making and of
Mhm.
motivation. Why is that important? I feel like everything I would normally do to prepare to start writing a novel, I can maybe get funding for because I just got to be able to articulate why it's
Right.
important that I have the time to
Right.
look into this. So that was put a light bulb on in my head because the deadline is in 9 days. And
Uh-huh.
uh and I just would feel like now is a great time for me to kind of take a stab at what do I see myself needing to have kind of resolved in so that I can frame the question in a way that makes
Mhm.
sense to me. And it's not might be a dramatic question, but I don't think it's a thematic question yet because it's too soon. So
Mhm.
anyway, that's what got me started. And so on that Monday morning, I did 2 hours, one on research for the Access Copyright Grant and actually just thinking about what I have to do and what sources of research that I want to ask them to allow me to access, to fund me for
Mhm.
time to access. And then 2 days later, which was yesterday, I watched a 1 hour presentation by the Writers Union of Canada on Canada Council grants and realized that the thing I thought I had completely fucked up last year has an open rolling submission process. So I
Ah.
can do it anytime. However, they're changing some of the infrastructure of the grant. So there's this one part that's going to close down March 19th. You have to get your application in before then. So I now have two really solid grants to apply for that aren't long shots
Mhm.
that will help me figure out where to put my focus in
Mhm.
actually I've already written some scenes for the novel, but really
Uh-huh.
where they're going, and then potentially end up with some funding or at least allow me to articulate my project. So that to me is exciting. And then I got back to this book, The Artist's Guide to Grant Writing. I've been reading it in the hospital and
Ah.
very good.
Yep.
And then the other part I've been aware of is that if you don't know where the grants fit for yourself, if you can't describe exactly what you're going to use the money for
Mhm.
yourself, then you need to rethink whether you should apply for that grant.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you've got to have a meaningful reason and you've got to be able to communicate that reason, right?
Yes. So for me, my update is this experiment has taken on more depth because now I understand it better. I understand the process a little bit better, and I also understand what I want out of it more. Aside from money, I want something very specific. So I think that's my update.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. So one is you're trying to come out the other side of this with a manuscript or at least a solid, start and progression and you understand what you're writing and all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
like I'm a big, big, big believer that you need to think about. And I define theme, I think, differently from probably how it's supposed to be defined.
Right.
But for me, it's really trying to find that North Star that
Mm,
guides you through the writing, right? So, what is it's not just a bunch of stuff happening. There's a
yeah.
point, there's a reason. It's coalescing around something and towards something and that kind of thing. And so
Yeah.
to me, that feels like a very meaningful piece of the creative process, no
Mm,
matter what you're doing. And so absolutely should be supported
yeah. Yeah.
because you can't do the rest unless you know kind of what you're doing, and you need to be able to explore and do some research and thinking and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that's great. And I would be very interested to see how you frame that.
Me too.
Or yeah, for somebody who's gonna be evaluating it and say, and go, yeah, this is something we should support.
Yeah.
Right. Because I
Well,
think
yeah,
all of the
thank you.
things that you're talking about this novel are fantastic. right? And I see how it connects to you personally.
Yeah.
Um, because it does reflect. It's like, your creative side is reflecting on the experiences you had over the last few years
Hmm.
and what you're trying to do just generally. And it's such an incredible thing to see. I think it's going to be great.
Oh,
So,
thanks, James.
um, yeah, so I think, and I'm very curious to see what you come up with in terms of describing it.
Well, me too. And so that's why I asked you, I emailed you the other day and said, I'll read your grant application if you don't
Uh,
mind reading mine. Because we're unlikely to be applying for the same ones. I'm not
yeah.
worried
Well,
about,
I haven't
competing.
seen that email yet. My assistant hasn't forwarded it to me.
Oh, no, you replied.
Oh, I did.
Yeah, you
Oh,
said great idea and sent me your
that was
application.
my assistant then. Sorry.
Your assistant's very efficient. So, so because I think that's the other part that I had been undereducated on was just how important it is to have eyes other than yours on some of the stuff in
Yeah.
your grant application because you cannot for sure know how you're coming across. You really can't.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm the kind of person who gets so excited to put the application in because you get that little dopamine reward when
Yeah.
it says, the application successfully submitted.
Yeah.
Bang.
Yeah.
That I can get a little rushed
Mm,
and I always need to remind myself to take a minute at
mm.
least
Yeah.
to think about things and make sure I haven't made stupid mistakes and
Yeah.
things. But
Yeah.
I have a process that kind of helps me with that. But yeah, no, you got to do it. So, and
Yeah.
I think that was a great idea, and I love that you sent that email. And that was apropos of my reaching out to you
Right.
because I needed two references for not a grant, but a residency I have now applied to.
Hmm.
And so it's funny because, we've talked a lot about, references and you need to be connected, blah, 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 blah. And this isn't about that. But I had a really tough time even asking you. And I feel like we're in this good sharing environment. So
Yeah.
I like, oh, why would, why are they going to say yes? Why would they want to help me out?
Yeah, I'm always delighted to be a reference. Honestly, I don't mind doing it. Some they used to want letters. Now I think they just want phone numbers.
Yeah, well, they asked for email and phone number. So who knows what happens. And I would be even more interested. Well, one, it'll be very interesting if they actually do reach out to you, what they ask, what they want to
Yeah,
know.
I'll let you know.
And even if they do reach out to you, because who knows, maybe you don't make it through the filtering process to where they
Yeah.
even get to that point. But that was my challenge. And so my grant update is I've been applying for mostly residencies right now
Mhm.
because like you, I want to come out the other end of this with a manuscript.
Yeah.
And time is the most precious, precious asset
Yeah.
to be able to do this stuff. And so a place where you go, it's a residency and you're committed to being there creating sounds like a pretty good way to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm, energized about it, but I get tripped up by these, I guess it's not a little thing, but kind of the details
Yeah.
kind of a little bit. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, just to go back to the idea of how it can be difficult to figure out who to ask to be a reference. So, it depends, for me, it depends on the application. So there's these, I think it's
mhm.
a Wallace Stegner Fellowship or something. And in
I've got that on my list too.
yeah, it's in California. I'm not eligible and I wouldn't apply even if I was, but even if I were. Anyway, the interesting thing to me is I was asked once to write a reference letter for that, and I thought, I don't think I'm well known enough to tip
Mhm,
the scales in that candidate's favor. So I spoke to what I knew about the person, and they are a fantastic writer, really
mhm,
good citizen of the literary community, etc. But there was this sort of sense of like they need a heavier hitter than me. I'm just not,
mhm,
I'm too low on the totem pole to make a good
mhm.
reference. Unless they just want me to speak about, is this person good at a residency? Then I can, because, we're at a residency
Yeah.
together. So it's interesting. the first few times I applied for some kind of grant or residency, I asked people in my writing group. But there
Yeah.
is this element of strategic wondering, I guess. So for you as a person who's applying to a residency, what made me seem like a good choice versus somebody who's got nice letterhead, and because you must know a ton of people, other people, right?
You do and you don't, right?
Mm,
And so maybe part of this is having to get a little uncomfortable,
yeah,
asking somebody who maybe is outside of that comfort zone where you can ask, right?
yeah,
But for me, everybody's kind of outside of that
yeah.
comfort zone. Who knows? But no, the reason why I asked you is one, I respect you as a writer, I respect you as an editor.
Thank you.
I know that you know me and you know my writing,
Mhm.
and you're less likely to say, "Oh my God, no."
I'm not going to ever say that.
Like they call you up,
You'd be
right?
great at a
But no,
residency.
but I think that's it, right? So, somebody were to ask me for that, or if you were to ask me, one of the
Yeah,
things I would say is this is a really wonderful person that you would want to have in a group of other wonderful people,
yeah,
right,
yeah.
at your residency.
That's what I would say
And the
too.
reason why is, and then I would have this, all these reasons why I would be able to say that, as opposed to I'm a pompous, important, imposing figure who is now going to dictate to you that you should have this person in because I'm a big deal.
Yeah. Or I'm a very
And
important, and I have a form letter I use, and it's just dear
right.
X, yes, I recommend
Yeah.
Y for residency X. Sincerely, John Christian.
Yeah, right, right.
I mean John
It-
Irving.
Either or. And I think, that would be like, so I've thought about it and there's sort of a publisher that I know, but I was like, they like my work, they've published my work, but I don't know, and then there's an agent who I've been building a relationship with who's turning out to be this really spectacular person.
Mm,
But then I was like, at the same time, he doesn't really know me,
mhm.
I mean, he could speak to the writing and that kind of thing. And really, I thought, I think maybe the better thing is somebody who can just say this is a talented writer, right? And they're
Yeah,
going to pick that up in the sample or not,
yeah,
right? Because that's where the rubber should hit the road.
yeah,
So I think it becomes about, I have a professional working relationship with this person as well
yeah.
as a friendship.
Right.
So I know he's a good person that you're going to want in your group of people,
Yeah.
if
That
that.
makes total sense. And I guess, I'm wondering too if not for this application, but if there was one that required three people, would it be strategic to pick, you know, yes, I recommend X for residency Y, signed John Irving. One of those, one of a
Mhm,
publisher who's published your work, and then one of somebody who can speak to you on a character, a level of personal character. I
mhm.
think level of personal character is going to become more important in the next 4 years.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, so I could ask, somebody who's a little bit more, of a decision maker. I don't want to say a name, but
Hmm.
a decision maker themselves, right? So
Yeah.
an agent is a decision maker, a publisher is a decision maker. But if they're going to get a phone call, I kind of feel like the sample should cover whether I'm a good enough writer.
Hmm.
And so maybe the worst thing that happens is they call somebody up and they're like, "Yeah, he's a good writer and seems like a decent enough person, but I don't really know him that well."
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah. So I think groundwork would be key in those kinds of situations where you have more than one. You don't know which one they're going to call
Mhm.
or if they're going to call everybody. You got somebody who, like me, who knows you really well. You've got somebody who likes your work.
I know there's people out there who strategically engage in relationships because they want to develop, they want that person to be their reference, their blurber, their da 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 da
Yeah.
da.
Yeah.
And I don't like that.
Yeah. Um,
It's fine for them to go out and do that.
if
But that's not something I'm gonna do.
No,
Uh,
I mean, if they're open about it, like it personally, it's not. you know how like okay, I'll read your applications either before or after you submit them, and you read mine. But the I think if you want to form a partnership with somebody who to say, how about I be your, how about you ask me for a reference letter, and if I don't think I'm the right person for this, I'll let you know. But otherwise, I'll just always write one. I'll just use the one I just did, or they can
Mhm.
phone me. So if you have an arrangement like that, I don't see anything wrong with that.
Mhm.
It's if you're doing it, if you're deciding unilaterally that that's going to be your person and you never ask them if that's okay, then that's a problem.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm thinking of like, so here I am, older white guy, and I think Sally Rooney is a big name in publishing, and I'd like to sidle up to her so that she can, write a reference for me. Seems a little bit much.
That's so
And there's
creepy.
people out there doing it, right?
Yeah, that's
And
creepy.
yeah, it's a little off.
Yeah,
And I think there's that part of, it's like that sort of games personship that I don't really want to engage in. But
yeah,
for you and I, we've known each other for years, so I don't mind, ultimately going, yeah, I need a reference. Pat, she knows me. I have respect for her. Of course,
yeah,
I
yeah,
will ask.
yeah. And
That feels
I have
really good.
a writer friend that I just go to her when I need one. She's much better known than I am as a writer.
Yeah.
Go to her. She'll sometimes go to me. She probably has better people she can go to now in terms of the utility of what they're saying. But I don't feel any hesitation to go to her because we kind of had to talk about it and said, well, we've got a letter now. Let's just use it. Why reinvent the wheel every time, you know?
Yeah, that's me in my rush. I'll send it out, it'll be dated 2003.
Yeah. They'll be like, he's a time traveler. This is who we want.
But no, I think, I'm gonna put my faith in the quality of the writing sample
Yeah.
and the general idea that I'm promoting,
Yeah.
and that the references are gonna be, no, he's not completely insane.
Yeah.
And
Well, I never said I wouldn't say that.
okay, well,
Not
you'll
gonna lie.
you'll write around it, or
Kidding. I think it's good. And I also think that we could have this conversation again in a year and feel differently about some of the stuff we just said that we feel
yeah,
one way about now. So I'm interested in kind of
yeah.
seeing how
Well,
that unfolds. Ha ha ha.
yeah, well, there's that unfolding again. No, and I think our we're evolving, because we have had very different conversations around this when we first started,
Yeah.
and now the conversation is getting a little bit more, I think, aware and seasoned,
Yeah.
and where we've made this, some decisions, and one for you is you're developing this novel idea,
Yeah.
and you're figuring out, where do I need support,
Yeah.
right? And where
Yeah.
does the grant world intersect with that?
Yeah.
And for me, it's figuring out, okay, a big name, reference, or big name this or big name is ephemera, and
Mm.
I want to focus on what really matters to me, and I think what should matter to anywhere I want to go,
Yeah.
which is this person working on something that's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So good luck.
100%. Good luck. Good luck. Good luck.
And Pat sings us out with a nice little ditty.
Thanks for listening to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. Hope you enjoyed this update on grant experiments. And if you have any grant information or experiments of your own, please hop on over to our Substack website at giftedunderachievers.substack.com and leave us a note in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time.